These are the Sony a6000 menu settings I use and why I use these settings, and some recommendations. Click on the chapter if you want to know more about a menu function on a specific tab and page. Tab 1, Page 1. Image size. Set it to large, 24 megapixels for the highest quality. Aspect ratio. 3:2 will give you the most resolution. You can always crop down to 16:9 on your phone or editing software. Quality. If you edit your pictures on the desktop, set it to RAW plus JPEG, or RAW. I set it to RAW plus JPEG so I have the option to edit my picture on the computer or to quickly just post a JPEG on social media. Panorama size. I never use this, but if you do, move the top dial to panoramic mode. Set to standard. Having to scan an even broader area using wide when making panoramas will take some experience with the camera to do efficiently. Panorama direction. You can pick the direction in this menu, either up, down, left, or right. File format. You can choose between XAVC-S, AVC-HD, or MP4. Record in XAVC-S, not in AVC-HD. It is an old format and it is low quality. MP4 is even lower quality. If you do not have an XAVC-S format, check the Sony website for a firmware update. Tab 1, Page 2. Record settings. Video. When using XAVC-S, use 24, 30, or 60 frames per second. Drive mode. Single shooting. Normal shooting mode. Continuous shooting. Shoots images continuously while you press and hold down the shutter button. I use this if I want to capture something moving or sports. You can change the speed to low, medium, or high. Self-timer. Shoots an image using the self-timer after a designated number of seconds have passed since the shutter button was pressed. Self-timer continuous shoots a designated number of images using the self-timer after a designated number of seconds have elapsed since the shutter button was pressed. Continuous bracket shoots images while holding down the shutter button, each with different degrees of brightness. I set it to 2 EV and 3 images when I am taking an HDR image and editing the image on the computer like this. Single bracket shoots a specified number of images, one by one, each with a different degree of brightness. I use continuous instead, less chance of moving the camera. White balance bracket shoots a total of 3 images, each with different color tones according to the selected settings for white balance, color temperature, and color filter. I never use this. DRO bracket, I never use this either. Flash mode. If you're interested in flash photography, you'll need to purchase a hot shoe flash. I would suggest Godox, as these both can have HSS, high-speed sync, or TTL through the lens auto mode, and are quite cheap. If you'd like to get more into flash photography, I would read up on the different possibilities and what their effect would be on your images. This is a basic exploration of what the different modes do. Fill flash. A fill flash is useful even in daylight to fill the shadows with light, like a person in the shade. Slow sync tells the camera to use a longer shutter speed along with a flash, which is better for night shots. In manual and shutter priority modes, there is no difference in flash power. But when using aperture priority, program, or auto, choosing slow sync tells the camera to use a longer shutter speed than it would ordinarily pick. What the slow sync flash mode does is first fire the flash for the subject exposure, and then allow for a longer shutter speed that will allow for more ambient light to be captured by the sensor. Rear sync. Rear sync tells the flash to fire right before the shutter closes. Moving objects will show a streak where they came from and a sharp image where they whir at the end of the exposure. This conveys a sense of speed with moving objects. Wireless, select wireless if you want to trigger an external flash. Flash comp or flash compensation. Especially when using slow sync or rear sync flash modes, you might have to lower the power of the flash to get a decently exposed image. Red eye reduction. This anti-red eye setting quickly fires the flash before your image capture starts, reducing the red eye effect often seen when using a flash. Focus mode. Here you can select how the autofocus engine will behave when you half-press the shutter button. AFS, with the half pressed of the shutter button, the camera only focuses once, suitable for capturing stills. I use this for landscapes. AFA, autofocus automatically intelligently switches between single and continuous. I never use this one since I like to have control if I want a single or continuous, and not the camera focusing on something moving in the frame if I wanted to focus on a stationary object. Continuous autofocus. The camera will continuously focus on any movement when you half press the shutter button. I use this when I need to capture something moving, like birds. DMF. The camera focuses on your subject and allows you to fine-tune your focus area further using the manual focus ring on the lens. This is convenient in situations such as macro photography. Manual focus. No autofocus is used, and you focus manually using the focus ring on the lens. I use this for astrophotography of taking pictures of the moon or the lunar eclipse. Another important fact is that in movie mode, only continuous autofocus and manual focus are available. Tab 1, page 3, focus area. I generally set this to wide or center. Wide focus area uses all focus points on the sensor. Center focuses on whatever is centered in your images. I use this if the camera keeps focusing on the wrong spot. I do not use flexible spot unless I have time to take a picture and the camera is focusing on the wrong spot. AF illuminator. The AF illuminator is a little red light allowing the camera to focus more easily. I leave it off since I shoot portraits and it can be annoying to the person you're shooting. If you are shooting in a lot of low light conditions, it is helpful when it is on. Autofocus drive speed. You can switch focusing speeds when using autofocus in movie mode. Fast sets the autofocus drive speed to fast. This mode is suitable for shooting active scenes, such as sports. Normal sets the autofocus drive speed to normal. Slow sets the autofocus drive speed to slow. This mode, the focus switches smoothly when the subject to be focused is changed. Autofocus track duration, movie. You can set the duration for autofocus tracking in movie mode. High sets the autofocus tracking duration to high. This mode is useful when recording movies when the subject is moving quickly. Normal, which is the default setting, sets the autofocus tracking duration to normal. This mode is useful when you want to keep the focus on a certain subject when there are some obstacles in front of the subject or in crowded places. Exposure comp. Exposure compensation. This could also be set from the bottom of the control wheel. Exposure step. Most people keep this at 0.3 EV. Tab 1, page 4. ISO. I set it to auto ISO. You can also select which ISO value you want on the right side of the control wheel. You can select at which ISO value you'd like to capture your image or change the auto ISO range. I have this range set between 100 and 6400. Any higher and the image gets really noisy. Metering mode. I use multi, which looks at the entire scene brightness. And on your screen, it gives you a reading on whether it is over or underexposed by the meter here on the bottom. Use center or spot if you want something specific to be properly exposed. White balance. If you are shooting RAW, you can set it to auto. If you're shooting JPEG or video, set the white balance that looks best to you. DRO Auto HDR. DRO stands for Dynamic Range Optimize and analyzes the contrast of your scene in real time. It produces an image with optimal brightness and recovered shadow detail. Just keep this on D-Range Optimizer. Creative style. The Sony creative styles can be best explained as being film emulations, the same way as do some camera manufacturers implement this. There is a range of styles available from vivid color to black and white. If you're shooting RAW, these styles are embedded in the RAW file, but not baked. They can always be zeroed after importing them to your RAW editor. JPEGs are saved with this styling applied. Standard is good for video if you're just starting out. Portrait for taking pictures of people, and landscapes for landscapes. Picture effect. Think of this menu as an Instagram app right in your camera, with all kinds of retro filters and effects. These are only available when the quality is set to JPEG, non-RAW. Tab 1, page 5. Zoom. This section only pertains to video. Zoom in the amount you want. Use the control wheel to zoom in and out. Focus magnifier. When focusing manually, you can set the camera to magnify a part of the screen so you can check focus. This is defaulted to the center of the control wheel to enlarge the image, and select the area you want to enlarge using top, bottom, left, or right side of the control wheel. Each time you press the center, the magnification scale will change. Long exposure. Leave it on, as there is no way of duplicating this process in post-production, except to take a black frame of the same length in the same atmospheric conditions. This will get rid of sensor noise and hot pixels, though I would turn this off if you are taking time-lapse pictures. This will slow down your camera's processing. High ISO noise reduction. Here you can select the amount of noise reduction applied to images with high ISO settings. This does not affect the raw images. As Sony has a rather aggressive noise reduction, I would change it to low. If not, you run the risk of getting paint-like smear images at higher ISO values. If you're a time-lapse photographer, turn this off. This will slow down your camera's processing. Lock on autofocus. Set up the tracking function to continue focusing on the subject. Off doesn't track a subject to be focused on. On tracks a subject to be focused on. On with shutter tracks a subject to be focused on when the shutter button is pressed halfway. Smile face detect. Detects the faces of your subjects and adjusts the focus, exposure, flash settings, and performs image processing automatically. Off does not use the face detection function. On registers faces, which is the default setting. It detects the registered face with higher priority using face registration. On detects a face without giving higher priority to the registered face. Smile shutter automatically detects and shoots a smile. Tab 1, page 6. Soft skin effect. I would turn this off and edit this yourself on the computer or using an app on your phone. It only works in JPEG. Audio object framing. When enabled, the camera will automatically crop your captured image to what deems best, meaning that the camera will crop the picture. Only available for JPEGs. A nice feature if you don't want to bother too much with cropping the picture yourself. I turn this off. Scene selection. Allows you to shoot with preset settings according to the scene when setting the mode dial to Scene, SCN. The menu items are Portrait, Sports Action, Macro, Landscape, Sunset, Night Scene, Handheld Twilight, Night Portrait, and Anti-Motion Blur. Movie. You can adjust the shutter speed or aperture value to your desired settings for recording movies. You can also check the image angle before shooting. Program Auto allows you to shoot with the exposure, both with the shutter speed and the aperture value adjusted automatically. The other settings can be adjusted manually. Aperture Priority allows you to shoot after adjusting the aperture value manually. Shutter Priority allows you to shoot after adjusting the shutter speed manually. Manual Exposure allows you to shoot after adjusting the exposure, both the shutter speed and aperture value, manually. SteadyShot sets whether or not to use the SteadyShot. It will be grayed out if you mount a lens without SteadyShot. Turn it off when using a tripod. Color Space. You can choose between Standard and Adobe Extended Color Range, RGB. This is only important if you shoot JPEG and not RAW. Adobe RGB would be preferable if you print many images from JPEGs because of the extended color range. If you shoot in RAW, keep it at sRGB. Tab 1, page 7. Auto Slow Shutter. Movie. Sets whether or not to adjust the shutter speed automatically when recording dark scenes. On uses auto slow shutter. The shutter speed automatically slows when recording in dark locations. You can reduce noise in the movie by using a slow shutter speed when recording in dark locations. Off doesn't use auto slow shutter. The movie would be darker than when on is selected, but you can record movies with smoother motion and less object blur. Audio recording. Set this to on or off. Wind noise reduction. This helps reduce noise from the wind during video recording. I have used this. It sounds like I'm underwater. Test it before you go out to see which you like better. Shooting tip list. Displays the shooting advice according to the selected shooting mode. Memory recall. Allows you to shoot an image after recalling often used modes or camera settings registered in advance. Set the mode dial to MR, memory recall. Press the left-right side of the control wheel or turn the control wheel to the selected desired number, then press on the center. Memory. What it does is allows you to save often used modes and settings. 1, 2, and 3 saves to the camera's internal memory. You can recall the settings using just the dial mode. Tab 2, page 1. Zebra. The zebra function shows a zebra pattern on the screen while shooting in any area that is in danger of highlight clipping. You can switch this off or anywhere in the range between 70 and 100. The zebra pattern is a highlight warning indicator that is common in video cameras. It does not control exposure, but it just warns you that your highlights are blown out. It is not recorded into the resulting image. I have it set halfway at around 70, and it is a very useful indication of correct exposure of the entire scene. MF Assist. This works in conjunction with the Focus Magnifier. You might remember that you can select the area to magnify when using Manual Focus, MF. Manual Focus Assist will need to be turned on if you want to use this feature. Focus Magnifier Time. You can set how long to hold the magnified area during MF Assist. 2 seconds, 5 seconds, or no limit. I set mine to no limit. Grid line. Sets whether the grid line is displayed or not. The grid line will help you to adjust the composition of images. The rule of thirds grid. Place main subjects close to one of the grid lines that divide the image into thirds for a well-balanced composition. Square grid. Square grids make it easier to confirm the horizontal level of your composition. It is suitable to determine the quality of your composition when shooting landscapes, close-up, or duplicate images. Diagonal square. Place a subject on the diagonal line to express an uplifting and powerful feeling. Off does not display the grid line. Auto review. It will immediately show you the picture you took for a few seconds before going to camera mode. I find this very annoying, so I turn it off. If you want to review your image, you can simply press the Playback button to do so. Display button. Selects the functionality, which is shown on the screen when you press the display button on the control wheel. You can choose what settings you want to show on the LCD screen or in the viewfinder. Tab 2, page 2. Peaking level. You can set it to high, mid, or low. I have mine set to mid. Peaking color. You can choose the color of the peaking between red, white, and yellow. I have it set to red, as this contrasts nicely with most scenes you capture. Exposure Set Guide. The Exposure Set Guide is an on-screen scroller that tells you the relation between your chosen aperture and the appropriate shutter speed for the scene you are shooting. I keep this on. Live View Display. Live View Display allows you to see the image you're going to capture with the settings you dialed in, like aperture and shutter speed. Display Continuous Autofocus Area. Leave this on so you can see where your camera focus is going. Tab 2, page 3. Pre-autofocus. Pre-autofocus focuses before you press the shutter button halfway down. I leave this off since the camera is likely to latch onto a subject before you have identified which subject you would like to track in continuous autofocus, especially in shooting action or sports. Zoom setting. Optical zoom only uses only the optical zoom capabilities of your lens. Digital zoom is like zooming on the computer and it reduces the picture quality. Clear image zoom I would use. The camera first zooms to the maximum optical magnification and then uses clear image zoom technology to enlarge the image an additional 2 times, producing clear, sharp images despite the increased zoom ratio. This is great if you are videoing with a prime lens and want to zoom in on something. iStart AF, I wouldn't worry about this. This always says invalid with this lens for whatever reason. Finder monitor, you can set the behavior of the viewfinder and screen here. You can set it to auto, which will switch between screen and viewfinder once your eye has been detected near the viewfinder. I have mine set to this, or you can set it to only the viewfinder on, or just the monitor on. Release without lens. Makes it possible to capture images even if the lens is not supported by the camera, like using an adapter with vintage lenses, or using lenses for another camera like Canon, or using manual focus lenses. Autofocus with shutter selects whether to focus automatically when you press the shutter button halfway down. I leave it on. Unless you're using back button autofocus, then turn this off. Tab 2, page 4. AEL with shutter. Sets whether to fix the exposure when you press the shutter button halfway down. I set this to auto. This helps the camera adjust the exposure while shooting in continuous shooting mode. E-front curtain shutter. This shortens the lag time between shutter releases. I turn this on. Superior Auto Image Extract. I never use this. When in Superior Auto, the camera takes multiple images and combines them into one image. Only available with JPEG. You can either save all images captured, off, or the combined image, on. Turn it off. I've tried this functionality and the combined image feature does not work well. Exposure compensation set. Select if the exposure compensation function, the 0.5 EV or 0.3 EV steps, also reduce flash power or not. I leave it to ambient and flash. Bracket order. I set the bracket order from -0 and plus since it makes it easier to see on the computer that these images are bracketed shots and to combine them into an HDR image. Tab 2, page 5. Face registration. If you register faces in advance, the camera can detect the registered face as a priority when face detection is set to on. Shoot the face from the front in a brightly lit place. The face may not be registered correctly if obscured by a hat, a mask, sunglasses, etc. This is helpful with a crowd of people like a wedding. Align the guide frame with the face to be registered and press the shutter button. When a confirmation message appears, select Enter. AF macro adjust. Don't worry about this unless you're using A-mount lenses. Lens comp. The chromatic aberration and distortion, I leave this on auto. I turn off shading because it is baked into the raw file and you may get weird artifacts near the edges. Tab 2, page 6. Function menu set. You can assign the functions to be called up when you press the FN function button. I currently have mine set like this. Drive mode, focus area, metering mode, flash comp, peak and color, zebra, white balance, grid line, creative style, SteadyShot. With the FN button press, it will look like this. Custom key settings, you can assign the desired function to the desired key. Some functions are only available when they're assigned to a custom key. You can assign the desired functions to the following keys: AEL button, custom button 1, custom button 2, FN button, control wheel, which controls center button, left button, right button, and down button, and custom button 3. I have set my camera to these custom settings. AEL button to eye autofocus, custom button 1 to focus magnifier, custom button 2 to autofocus manual focus toggle, center button to AEL toggle. I use the AEL button for eye autofocus because it's easier to press the shutter and the AEL button then the shutter and the center button. I keep the rest on default. Left button to drive mode, right button to ISO, and down button to exposure compensation. Dial wheel setup. You can switch which functions of the control dial and the control wheel, which you want to control the aperture on and which you want to control the shutter speed on. Dial wheel EV comp. You can compensate the exposure by using the front or rear dial. You can adjust the exposure in a range of -5 EV to 5 EV. Movie button. Sets whether or not to activate the movie button. Always starts movie recording when you press the movie button on any mode. Movie mode only. Starts movie recording when you press the movie button, only when it's set to movie mode. I have mine set to always. Dial wheel lock. You can set whether the dials and wheels will be locked by pressing and holding the FN function button. You can release the lock by holding the FN function button down again. Lock locks the front and rear dials when you press and hold down the FN button. Unlock. The front or rear dials are not locked, even if you press and hold the FN button. I just keep it unlocked. Tab 3, page 1. Send to smartphone. You can send one or several images directly to your wireless device, phone or tablet. You can decide which images you want to transfer on the camera or the smartphone via the Sony imaging app, available for free in the Apple or Android store. You'll have to connect the camera via Wi-Fi first. It makes a Wi-Fi access point, using the instructions on the camera screen. It works just like connecting to any other access point with your phone or a tablet. When your phone is wirelessly connected to the camera once, it will remember this and make it a lot faster to connect later. Send to computer. You will need to connect the computer physically to the camera using the supplied USB cable, and you can push selected images to your Sony Play Memories desktop software downloaded from their website. View on TV. If you have a Wi-Fi enabled TV, you can see pictures and slideshows directly from the camera through your home wireless network. One Touch NFC enables quick one-touch connection as opposed to first accessing the camera's Wi-Fi network with NFC, near field communication capable devices. I've never been able to make this work. Write in the comments if you have or have not been able to make this work. Airplane mode disables all wireless functionality, just like airplane mode does on your phone. WPS push. If your access point has the WPS button, you can register the access point to the camera easily by pushing the WPS button. Press the WPS button on the access point you want to register. Tab 3, page 2. I never mess with these settings. Edit device name. If you wish, you can change the name of the device access point, perhaps to make it easier to identify which camera is yours in particular situations. Reset network set resets all network settings. Tab 4, page 1. Application list. A list of applications on this camera. Tab 5, page 1. Delete. Deletes one or multiple images stored on your SD card. View mode. Sets the view mode image display method when pressing the play button. Date view displays images by date. Folder view, still, displays only still images. The last three displays the movies in those formats. I just keep it in date view. Image index. Choose whether you want the image browser to display 12 or larger, or 30 smaller images per page. Display rotation. Select whether you want the camera to rotate images automatically when you rotate the camera or not. Slideshow. Select whether you want the camera to repeat slideshows when all the pictures are viewed or not, and choose the interval between slides. Rotate changes the orientation of the images in camera. Tab 5, page 2. Enlarge image. Select an image and expand a portion of that picture, useful for checking details in focus. 4K still image playback outputs the still images in 4K resolution to an HDMI connected TV that supports 4K. Protect protects recorded images against accidental erasure. Specify printing. Specify printing is a feature that allows images to be marked for printing later. Tab 6, page 1. Monitor brightness. Manually set the monitor brightness or change the brighter settings for sunny weather. Viewfinder brightness. Set to auto, which adapts to the lighting circumstances or manually changes to your preferred settings. Find your color temperature. Change the color temperature of the viewfinder, colder, warmer, to your liking. I don't make any adjustments here. Volume settings. Modify the playback volume for recorded videos or demos. Audio signals. Select whether the camera produces a sound or not. For example, when the focus is achieved by pressing the shutter button halfway down. It is a little distracting to me, so I turn it off. Tab 6, page 2. Tile menu. Choose between tiles or a tiled front page when accessing the menu, or a linear style menu layout. I want to get right into the menu, so I keep this off. Mode dial guide. I turn this off. It can be handy for a beginner to get familiar with what the different shooting modes do. Delete confirm. Set this to cancel first. That will give you the option to cancel first before you accidentally delete a photo. You'll want to have this on to make sure you don't accidentally delete anything. Power save start time. Sets time intervals to automatically switch to power saving mode when you are not performing operations to prevent wearing down the battery. To return to shooting mode, perform an operation such as pressing the shutter button halfway down. I have it set to 5 minutes, a good balance between usability and battery life. Tab 6, page 3, cleaning mode. If dust or debris gets inside the camera and adheres to the surface of the image sensor, it may appear as dark spots on the image, depending on the shooting environment. If this happens, this might help. If not, you may have to clean the sensor. Demo mode. You don't need demo mode. Turn this off. Remote control. If you have an infrared remote, turn this on so you can trigger the shutter or movie recording with remote. HDMI resolution. If you're going to use an external monitor, you can control the settings here. Auto. The camera automatically recognizes the HD monitor and sets the output resolution. 1080p outputs the signal in HD picture quality. 1080p. 1080i outputs the HD picture quality to 1080i. Control for HDMI. When connecting this product to a Bravia sync-compatible TV using an HDMI cable sold separately, you can operate this product by aiming the TV remote control at the TV. HDMI info display, if you want to display the camera information on the monitor. Tab 6, page 4. USB connection. I keep it on mass storage for firmware updates. PC remote if you want to control the camera from the computer. USB LUN settings. Keep it on multi. Language sets the language to be used in the menu items, warnings, and messages. Date and time setup sets the date and time in the camera. Area settings sets where in the world you are using the camera. Tab 6, page 5. Format. Erases everything on the memory card. Always format the card in the camera and not on the computer for a stable performance of the memory card. File number. Name your files according to the series, or reset to start from 1. Set record folder. Selects where the camera will be stored newly captured images. New folder. Make a new folder for quickly organizing events and locations. Folder name. Choose whether to have folder names in standard form, DSC, or create a new one by date. Setting folders by date will make organizing your images easier. I have mine by date. Recover image database. If you have a storage card error, you can try rebuilding the database to retrieve lost images, possibly. Tab 6, page 6. Display media info. You can check how much space is left on your SD card. Version. Check what version of the operating system your camera and the lens is running. Sony sporadically releases updates with new features, so it might be worth checking if any new firmware versions are available. If you don't have the version 3.21, go on the Sony website and download the firmware for that. Setting reset fully resets the camera to factory settings. Leave a question in the comment section for me to answer. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe for more videos, and see me in the next video.